In the heart of a grand empire, under the rule of a powerful king, lived a humble man named Mordecai. He was a man of integrity, quietly going about his days, serving at the king's gate. His life seemed ordinary, just one face in a sea of countless subjects. But Mordecai carried a deep secret, a loyalty that ran deeper than anyone could imagine. One day, while at his post, he overheard a sinister plot. Two of the king's own officials, consumed by bitterness, were planning to assassinate the king. Without a moment's hesitation, Mordecai acted. He knew he had to protect the king, not for personal gain, but because it was the right thing to do. He sent word to Queen Esther, his own niece, who then informed the king of the treacherous plan. The plot was foiled, the traitors were brought to justice, and the king's life was saved. The event was carefully recorded in the royal chronicles, the official history of the kingdom. And then nothing. The moment passed. The kingdom moved on. Mordecai returned to his post at the gate, his heroic deeds seemingly forgotten, buried in the pages of a dusty book. No reward, no recognition, not even a simple thank you. It was as if it never happened. Meanwhile, a man named Haman was rising through the ranks. He was ambitious, arrogant, and hungry for power. The king, captivated by Haman's charm, promoted him to the highest position in the kingdom, second only to the king himself. A royal decree was issued. Everyone must bow down to Haman whenever he passed. It was a sign of ultimate respect, a command from the king. But Mordecai refused. He would not bow. Not out of disrespect for the king, but because his allegiance was to a higher power, to God alone. He stood tall, a solitary figure of defiance amidst a crowd of bowing subjects. Haman, accustomed to absolute obedience, was enraged by Mordecai's refusal. His pride was wounded, his authority challenged. This one man's defiance was a constant, public insult. How dare he? Haman's anger wasn't just directed at Mordecai, it grew into a monstrous, vengeful hatred for all of Mordecai's people. He saw them all as a threat. Fueled by his rage, Haman devised a wicked and terrible plan. He went to the king, spinning a web of lies. He claimed there was a certain group of people scattered throughout the kingdom whose laws were different, who were a danger to the king's rule. He offered a massive sum of money to the royal treasury to carry out their complete annihilation. The king, trusting Haman completely, and perhaps lured by the promise of wealth, agreed. Without fully understanding the horrific consequences, he gave Haman his signet ring, granting him the authority to seal the decree. The order was sent out to every corner of the empire. On a specific day, all of Mordecai's peoplemen, women, and children were to be destroyed. A dark cloud of despair fell over the land as the news spread. There was great mourning and sorrow. For Mordecai and his people, it seemed all hope was lost. Their fate was sealed by the king's own hand. Haman, in his arrogance, was so confident of his victory that he even built a massive gallows specifically designed to hang Mordecai, the man who had dared to defy him. He planned to ask the king for permission the very next morning. The stage was set for a final, tragic end. But that very night, something extraordinary happened. The king couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning, he felt a strange restlessness he couldn't explain. To pass the long hours, he commanded his servants to bring the royal chronicles, the official records of his reign, and read them aloud to him. It was a random act, a simple attempt to cure his insomnia. The servants opened the book and began to read. They read about tax records, minor events, and diplomatic visits. And then their voice landed on a particular entry. An entry about a foiled assassination plot. An entry detailing how two of the king's officials had planned to harm him, and how a man named Mordecai had uncovered the plot and saved the king's life. The king sat up, listening intently. He asked his servants, "What honor or reward has been given to Mordecai for this?" The servants replied, "Nothing has been done for him." The king was stunned. A man had saved his life, and he had received no recognition, no reward. This was a grave oversight, a debt that had gone unpaid. At that very moment, as the sun began to rise, the king heard someone entering the outer court. "Who is in the court?" he asked. It was Haman. He had come early, eager to get the king's permission to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had just built. The timing was almost unbelievable. The king called him in. Before Haman could even speak, the king asked him a question that would change everything. What should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Haman's heart swelled with pride. Who else could the king possibly want to honor but him? He had just been promoted. He was the king's most trusted advisor. This was his moment. He let his imagination run wild, describing the most lavish, public honor he could think of. For the man the king delights to honor, Haman said, let him be dressed in a royal robe the king himself has worn, and let him ride on a royal horse the king has ridden with a royal crest on its head. Then let one of the king's most noble princes lead the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." The king listened to Haman's extravagant suggestion and nodded. "Excellent idea," he said. Then he delivered the most shocking command Haman could ever imagine. "Go at once," the king ordered. "Get the robe and the horse, just as you have said, and do all of this for Mordecai, the man who sits at the king's gate. Do not leave out a single detail of what you have suggested." The words hit Haman like a physical blow. Mordecai, the man he despised, the man he was about to ask permission to hang. He had to honor him in the most public way possible. Haman was trapped by his own words, his own ego. He couldn't refuse. With a heart full of humiliation and fury, Haman had no choice but to obey. He took the royal robe and the king's horse. He found Mordecai at the gate, still in his humble clothes, unaware of the incredible turn of events. Haman had to dress his mortal enemy in the king's own robe, place him on the king's horse, and then lead him through the city. Can you imagine the scene? Haman, the second most powerful man in the empire, walking on foot, forced to shout for all to hear. This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. The very honor he had designed for himself was now being bestowed upon the man he hated most. It was a public spectacle of complete and utter humiliation for Haman, and an unexpected, glorious vindication for Mordecai. After the parade was over, Mordecai simply returned to his post at the king's gate, as humble as ever. But Haman rushed home, his head covered in shame, his world turned upside down. The very plan he had set in motion to destroy Mordecai had backfired in the most spectacular way. The story doesn't end there, of course. Soon after, Haman's entire wicked plot was exposed to the king, and the gallows he had built for Mordecai became his own destiny. Mordecai was then elevated to Haman's position, becoming second in command of the entire empire. This incredible story shows us something powerful. In our lives, we may do the right thing, act with integrity, and feel like no one notices. It can feel like our good deeds are forgotten, buried under the noise of the world. But God sees. He never forgets. He keeps a record, not in a dusty book, but in His perfect memory. We may not see the reward immediately. It might take days, months, or even years. But at just the right moment, when it matters most, He will turn the tables. He can take a situation that seems hopeless and orchestrate a stunning reversal. The very plans meant to harm you can become the source of your greatest honor. So keep being faithful. Keep doing what's right, even when it's hard and no one seems to be watching. Because a night of restlessness for a king, a forgotten entry in a book, can change everything. God is always at work behind the scenes, and His timing is always perfect. Thank you for watching. If this story encouraged you, please like and subscribe for more content.